Welcome to TCM, Stacey Abrams. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
For those of you who don't know, Stacey Abrams is a writer, an advocate, an entrepreneur, a lawyer, and among the most significant political activists of our time. Stacey, you spent 10 years in the Georgia House, 7 as the minority leader. But your work since leaving the House to fight voter suppression and get people registered has really been, it's changed the political landscape of the country. So first of all, thank you. I'm a believer that obviously the more people have access to the ballot, the better the country is. Stacey is here to discuss specifically Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, part of our ongoing series from the New Republic's list of the 100 most significant political films of all time, and she's picked Mr. Smith. If Mr. Smith is part of this answer, that's great. But in general, what inspired you to take on the role that you've had really since you left and when you were in the Georgia House, but specifically since you left the House?
I grew up in Mississippi, the daughter of two people who became ministers, but they were activists in the civil rights movement as teenagers. And they raised us to believe that the right to vote is sacred and that you protect it for everyone or we all risk losing it. And so for me, the through line has been the responsibility for participating in our democracy takes on different forms for each person. And I've had the privilege of focusing on voting rights since I was in college. And that has not only driven me, but it's also inspired me to keep doing the work every time I think maybe I'm going to take a nap. I remember we still have people out there who don't know that their voices matter, and so I get back up.
How and when did you become a classic movie lover?
My love of classic movies came about because I lived in Gulfport, Mississippi, and we couldn't afford cable, so we only had 2 channels, ABC and PBS. And the ABC station would play classic movies on the weekends. And that's where I discovered all of the movies I love.
Mr. Smith comes in at number 11 on the New Republic's list of the 100 most significant political films of all time. Why did you choose Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
I remember watching Mr. Smith Goes to Washington when I was probably 11 or 12. And that's that moment where you're starting to be politically aware, but also recognize that politics is fraught with corruption and challenges and that people are remarkably human. And I remember watching that movie and the ringing of the bell, just the number of times they showed that Liberty Bell. But what stuck with me was that filibuster. It was the moment I realized that if you kept trying, if you kept working, no matter how hard it is, that has resonated for me for years. And it's actually been one of the moments of renewal for me. He didn't give up, despite some really dark odds that you sometimes forget about the movie. And when I first watched it, it was that him raging against the machine and demanding satisfaction, demanding to be heard. When I watched it again, probably about 15 years later, I was struck by Saunders, Jean Arthur, and her remarkable portrayal of this woman who actually was the one in command of the rules. It wasn't just Jimmy Stewart's Jefferson Smith, it was Saunders in the gallery reminding him of what his power was. When I became a legislator, one of my responsibilities, self-imposed, was to read all of the rules, to know what I could and could not do. And when I became leader, it was one of the ways I was able to navigate more effectively. And I remember it was Saunders who was in my head, because when she walks him through how a bill becomes a law, it's not quite like Schoolhouse Rock.
Where are we now?
We're over in the House.
Oh, yeah, House. More amendments, more changes, and the bill goes back to the Senate. The Senate doesn't like what the House did to the bill, they make more changes. The House doesn't like those changes, stymie.
So?
So they appoint men from each house to go into a huddle called a conference, and they battle it out. Finally, if your bill is still alive after all this vivisection, it comes to a vote.
And her fierce belief that the process has to follow just continues to resonate.
Many of us who've been around a bit, as you and I have, think that we are in very dangerous political times. And I stand by that. But it was certainly dangerous in 1939 too. So the question was, is there some solace that we've been at stages before where we felt the same and we have gotten through? In fact, we came through in a rather glorious way for a while.
Absolutely. There is not only solace, but there's instruction. You have political violence, you have a manipulated media where you have someone who's trying to control what we hear and what we know. And yet people found a way to get their information out. that the activist spirit that had those boy rangers going and doing the work. So we found a way to share information. We found a way to make sure the truth was known. And we found a way to survive. It doesn't diminish the horror of where we are, but it's a reminder that we have been here before, we will be here again, and our metrics should always be, what are we willing to do to get to the next moment?
Stacey Abrams, thanks very much. We'll talk after the movie, but let's watch it now. From Columbia in 1939, directed by Frank Capra, there are Jimmy Stewart, Jean Arthur, Claude Rains, and Thomas Mitchell in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I am back with Stacey Abrams. Stacey, thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, really the movie only resolves itself in like the last 90 seconds, right? I mean, it takes that moment that happens in so many movies where it's not working, it's not bleak, and then the real criminal has a crisis of conscience and reveals all. But it still works.
It works beautifully. And what I think is so fantastic about Claude Rains in that last scene is that you can see his arc. You watch him, and as Jefferson Smith rails on, you can see his sense of guilt start to overwhelm him, but you can also see the return of the man he was supposed to be. What I found the most effective was when he stands outside, when he's stopped by his peers, when he's trying to take his life. He realizes that's the coward's way out, that he's got to actually take responsibility. And when I think about our politics, when I think about our future, it's that moment that matters the most, when you're willing to take responsibility and take the consequences for your actions. Jefferson has collapsed under the weight of his attempt to change things. But it was when Senator Payne says, I did it, it's my fault, and hold me accountable.
Right. Expel me, not him. Stacey, where are we now in this country politically? What's your assessment?
I approach politics in this way. Politics is about people. They don't care about your party. They care about their lives. And where we do our best work is when we create space for people to be heard. We can't control what they say. We can't control what they choose. As a politician, I've always wanted people to vote for me. But as an advocate for voting rights, I want people to be able to speak. And so I'm always encouraged when we see more people take advantage of that space. I am not discouraged, but I am maddened by those who try to block it. And that's where I get my energy. How do I make certain that regardless of who you choose, that you have the right to choose?
The work that you have done in Georgia to fight voter suppression, expand voting rights in Georgia has led to significant victories for Democrats, both in the 2020 election and then the runoff, and then 22 and then the runoff. Is what you did in Georgia, obviously one would think it could be applied to other states. Is that happening around the country?
It is. We saw in Mississippi a very close race, the closest race that we've seen at the governor's level since 1999. In fact, it's the closest race for a Democrat in almost 20 plus years. But what changed was that people who hadn't participated before believed their voices mattered, and they showed up at the polls. I am a Democrat, but more than that, I'm an American. And we should celebrate when new people believe that they should be heard. And I think that's the crux of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's about making sure that we remember why our democracy matters. And when he visits Lincoln, he is saying to us, he's reminding us of how hard we fought for it. And so to your question, I am heartened by the fact that we've been at this for so long and we have seen how dark it can be, and we're still working. And so I like to say I'm neither optimistic nor pessimistic. I am determined, and that's where I stay.
Stacey Abrams, this has been a pleasure. Can you come back and just talk about other movies you love? It doesn't have to be about politics.
I would love to.
All right.
So we can talk about Sergeant York.
Oh,
which is one of my other favorite movies.
Sergeant York, what do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, it would have been very easy to see Gary Cooper in the role of Jefferson Smith. Yeah. Stacey Abrams, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Appreciate it.
Delightful. Thank you.
Stacey is done for the night, but of course the movies continue on TCM, and as always, they are uncut and commercial-free.
Next on TCM, Hearts and Minds, then the lives of others, and later, Born in Flames. The revolution is televised on TCM tonight.